All right, superstars, we are going to go ahead and look at lesson 2.2. So starting on the web page again, going to Math 7 textbook, chapter 2, lesson 2.2, adding rational numbers. So we've got some activities here. Really, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the examples, and then I'm going to help you do some, what it says, on your own, and then you've got some review problems for a quick assignment. So again, remember, for fractions, you've practiced this in elementary school. In order to add or subtract fractions, they do need a common denominator. So if they don't have a common denominator, you need to make them have that before you can actually add or subtract. We're going to go ahead and use the previous rules again with our integers. Remember, if they have the same signs for addition, you will add them and it will stay the same sign. And then if they have different signs, you will take the difference or subtract, and then you'll take the sign from the greatest absolute value. So on example 1 here real quick, if you notice the denominators are not the same, 3 and 6. Therefore, the 3 should be able to change into a 6 by multiplying by 2. So they skip that step, but hopefully you would know that. I will help you with that step when I do that. So they have negative 16 over 6 plus 5 over 6. So our numerators is where our concern is. If you notice, they have different signs, negative and a positive. So we will take the difference or subtract, and then take the sign from the greater absolute value. So 16 subtract 5 is 11. Take the negative sign. Remember, we do ask you to possibly reduce. There are some problems that you will have to reduce your fraction. And then being able to practice that good skill of writing it as an improper fraction or changing your improper fraction to a mixed number as it is here. Negative 1 and 5 over 6, because 6 times 1 is 6, plus 5 is 11, and it has a negative sign. With your decimals, it's pretty much the exact same thing. Remember the rules. Same sign, add them, keep the sign, different signs, subtract, and take the sign of the greater absolute value. And that's what it's talking about right here. So go ahead and going to do a few quick problems to help you out. And we're going to go ahead and switch to that. All right, so lesson 2.2 review, practicing those skills. Hopefully I can write it a little bit better for you. On number 1, if you notice, I don't have the same denominator, so I cannot add or subtract yet. So that means I need to change a 4 into an 8. And the way we do that again is we multiply our numerator and denominator by a 2, which would give me a 2 over 8, because 1 times 2 is 2. Our negative 7 stays the same. And then for our answer, of course, we do have a denominator of 8. But for our numerator, we need to go ahead and realize, again, different signs. So I take the difference, which means subtraction. So 7 subtract 2 is a 5. And then which has the greater absolute value? Obviously the negative 7, so it's negative 5 over 8. This is a proper fraction. I cannot write it as a mixed number, and I cannot reduce it. So that means I am good to go there. Number 2, negative 6 and 1/3. I'm actually going to change that into an improper fraction because I noticed that 20 over 3 is an improper fraction. And the way we do that again is 3 times 6 is 18, plus 1 is 19, and of course it has that negative sign. I do notice they have the exact same denominator, so therefore I can go ahead and add or subtract. Since they have different signs, I am going to subtract, which gives me a 1. And then looking at the signs, 20 has the greater absolute value, so therefore it is positive 1/3. Number 3, I'm going to go ahead and write it as an actual fraction, so 2 over 1, and then adding negative 7 over 2. Funny little story. There was actually one student that I had many years ago. The one thing he found the most successful throughout the whole year of 8th grade math is by being able to tell me, you put a 1 under it. Sometimes he tried to say that was the answer or the step for other problems, but unfortunately that was incorrect. Good old times. All right, our denominator, LCD, would be a 2. Second fraction gets to stay as is. Your first fraction, in order to have a denominator of 2, obviously we're going to multiply by 2. And 2 times 2 is 4. And then I'm going to go ahead and combine them, if you will. Going to go ahead and subtract since they have different signs, which is going to give me a 3. And take the sign from the 7 because it has the greater absolute value. So negative 3 halves. And then I always like telling my students, go ahead and put the word or, and then trying to figure out, of course it is negative, what the mixed number is going to be because it is an improper fraction. 2 goes into 3 one whole time. Denominator is still a 2. 2 times 1 is 2, and I got to figure out what's up here. Obviously, there's only one option because it's just 1/2. Because 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. 3 over 2 with a negative sign. Beautiful. All right, our remaining problems there, if you notice, they are dealing with quick decimals. So let's go ahead and clean this out. Good thing about digital is you could always go back and watch it again if you need to. Number 4. So what I'm going to ask you to do is realize that the answer is going to be negative. Or sorry, man, mistake, Mr. Murillo. The answer is going to be positive because 15 has the greater absolute value. Number 5, the answer is going to be negative because they are both negative, and when I add them, it's going to stay negative. Where on number 6, it's going to be a negative because I'm going to take the difference, and the negative 2.75 has the greater absolute value. Sorry, I got my negative sign ready there. So number 4, positive answer. All I need to do is 15.3 and 12.5 are going to subtract. So you get to practice your elementary subtraction because 3 cannot subtract 5. 13, sorry, that's kind of messy, 13. 13 subtract 5 is an 8. Line up the decimals. 4 subtract 2 is a 2. Zeros were not really needed, so we've got a positive 2.8. Again, this was number 4. Number 5, we already know that's going to be negative because when I add the two negatives together, it stays negative. I'm going to go ahead and line it up as 4.30. So when I add them, I get a 5, a 4, a 12. 12.45 with a negative sign. Number 6, we already know is negative, but we're going to go ahead and show a little bit of work. We got 2.75 and a 0.65. Again, the step is to subtract because they have different signs. 5 subtract 5 is 0. 7 subtract 6 is 1. 2 subtract 0 is 2. So I can write it as negative 2.1. I really want to caution you again on those negative signs. Please be very careful. Don't make those silly mistakes. All right, last piece is just quick evaluation, and you've done this before. So on number 7, it says b plus 4a. b is negative 5 over 2. 4a, it's 4 multiplied by a half. Half of 4 is a 2. Negative 5 over 2 plus 2. Or really 2 over 1, right? And then if you notice, it's just like what we had before. I want an LCD of 2. This one gets to stay the same. And I'm going to go ahead and multiply by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So I've got negative 5 halves plus 4 halves, which again tells me I'm going to go ahead and subtract because they are different signs. 5 subtracted 4 is a 1. And then I look at my signs again. The negative 5 has the greater absolute value, so therefore it is negative 1/2. Last thing here again on number 8 is since you have your absolute value bars, at the very end, remember the absolute value is considered an operation, so you definitely want to go ahead and keep that at the very end. So got same denominators. That's a very good news there. So it means I can just go ahead and subtract to get a 4 with a negative sign because 5 has the greater absolute value, or negative 5 does, with the absolute value bars. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And the absolute value of negative 2, like we talked about before, is just 2 because the distance from negative 2 and 0 is 2 units. Bam, we got it. All right, you've got a quick, short review, if you will, looking at the odds. And remember, you can always find your answers on the bottom left. Selected answers for 2.1, 2.2, and beyond. All right, be awesome. Do the best that you can, and we'll keep learning.